In a village called Okpenu, there is a house that nobody enters after dark. Not because it is forbidden. Not because it is dangerous in the way that most things are dangerous. No. This house is avoided because of what happens there every single night at the same time. A woman cooks. She sets the table for two. She serves food to someone who has not taken a breath in 6 months. And each night, people disappear from the village. This is the story of a widow named Chibueze. And it is a story about the difference between love and obsession. Between honoring memory and creating a curse. Listen carefully. Because by the end, you will understand why her neighbors are gone, and why some kinds of grief are more dangerous than death itself. The village of Okpenu sits on the edge of a thick forest. The people there are warm and kind, but also cautious. They know that death lives close by. The forest is old, and old places remember things. Chibueze was one of the happiest women in Okpenu. For 30 years, she had been married to a man named Emeka. Emeka was a trader who traveled to other villages and returned with cloth, spices, and stories. He was kind to his wife. He never raised his voice. He brought her gifts. He laughed at her jokes. They did not have children, but they did not seem to need them. They had each other, and that was everything. The village watched them and used them as an example of what marriage should be. When young women complained about their husbands, the elders would say, "Why are you troubled? You should be like Chibueze and Emeka. They do not argue. They do not anger each other. They are at peace." Chibueze loved cooking for her husband. Every morning, she would wake before the sun and begin to prepare his meals. She cooked his favorite foods, soups with vegetables and meat, cassava and plantain, rice with okra. She knew exactly what he liked. She knew that he preferred his food warm but not too hot. She knew that he liked to drink water after eating, not before. Cooking for Emeka was not a chore for Chibueze. It was an act of love. With every stir of the pot, she was telling him something. With every carefully placed vegetable, she was saying, "I know you. I love you. I choose you." Emeka knew this. He would eat slowly, taking time with every bite. He would tell his wife how good the food was. He would hold her hand while he ate. When she sat across from him, watching him eat, she was perfectly happy. This was her life for 3 decades. And then, one day, everything changed. Emeka was returning from a long trading trip. He had been gone for 2 months. Chibueze had prepared a special meal for his return, his favorite soup with meat that had been marinating for days. She had made enough food for a celebration. But Emeka never came home. Instead, a man came to the house and told her that Emeka had become ill on the road. His fever was very high. His body ached. He could not continue traveling. He had stayed in a village just beyond the forest boundary, hoping to recover. But the illness was too strong. By the time the man reached Okpenu, Emeka was already dead. The funeral happened 3 days later. The village came to pay respects. They brought gifts of cloth and yams. They said kind things about Emeka. They told Chibueze that she would recover, that time would heal her, that she would find peace. But they did not know what they were saying. Because Chibueze did not want to recover. She did not want to find peace. She did not want to accept that her husband was gone. The thought of never cooking for him again, never sitting across from him at dinner, never holding his hand while he ate, this thought was not something she could bear. So she decided not to bear it. On the night after the funeral, when the village was sleeping, Chibueze did something that nobody in her village had ever done before. She set her table for 2. She cooked her husband's favorite meal. And then she served it exactly as she always had, 1 plate in front of his empty chair, and 1 plate for herself. "I know you are gone," she whispered to the empty chair. "But I am not ready to accept this yet. So tonight, I will cook as if you were here." I will eat as if you were here. And maybe, if I do this enough times, it will not hurt so much. She sat at the table and ate her dinner, speaking to her dead husband as if he were alive. She told him about her day. She told him about the woman at the market who had smiled at her with pity. She told him about the rain that had fallen that afternoon. And as she spoke, something strange happened. The pain became smaller. Not gone, but smaller. Like a rock she had been carrying in her chest was becoming lighter. That night, she slept better than she had since receiving the news of his death. The next night, she did it again. She cooked his favorite food. She served it to the empty chair. She ate and spoke to him. And again, the pain was smaller. She did this every night. Weeks passed. Then months. The village began to notice that Chibueze was not grieving the way that a widow should grieve. She was not crying. She was not tearing her clothes. She was not neglecting her appearance. Instead, she seemed almost peaceful. She is handling it well, some women said. But others noticed something else. They noticed that she talked to herself constantly. They noticed that she spoke as if someone was answering her, even though nobody was there. They noticed that she would stand in her doorway at sunset and call to someone who would not come. They became concerned. One day, the oldest woman in the village, a woman named Nwanima who was 92 years old and had seen everything, came to visit Chibueze. "You must stop this," Nwanima said gently, sitting across from Chibueze in her home. "Stop what?" Chibueze asked. "This speaking to your dead husband. This cooking for him. This refusing to accept what has happened. It is not healthy, daughter. Your grief is becoming something else. Something dark." Chibueze felt anger rise in her chest. "You do not understand," she said. "I am not refusing to accept his death. I am choosing to honor his memory. I am choosing to keep the love alive. What is wrong with that?" "Nothing," Nwanima said, "if it brings you peace. But I see that it does not bring you peace. I see that it brings you a kind of dream. And dreams can be dangerous. They can pull us away from the real world. They can make us forget the difference between what is real and what we wish was real. Then I choose to live in my wish," Chibueze said. "Because the real world is empty now." Nwanima stood to leave. At the doorway, she turned back. "Grief that is not released becomes a poison," she said. "It poisons the person who holds it. And sometimes, it poisons others as well." After Nwanima left, Chibueze stood in her kitchen and thought about her words. But she did not change anything. She continued to cook. She continued to serve her dead husband. And she continued to speak to him every night as if he were alive. About 4 months after Emeka's death, strange things began to happen in the village. The first person to disappear was a young man named Okpenu. He was a good boy, kind and hardworking. One evening, he went to walk by the river, something he did every day. He never came back. The village searched the river and the forest. They called his name. They looked in every house and every hiding place. But Okpenu was gone. It was as if the earth had swallowed him. 2 weeks later, another person disappeared. This time, it was a woman named Amora. She was a mother of 2 children. She went to fetch water from the well in the evening, and she never returned. Her water pot remained at the well, empty and waiting. The village became afraid. They gathered in the center, and they spoke about evil spirits. They spoke about curses. Some said that a witch had come to Okpenu. Others said that the forest was hungry, but they did not connect these disappearances to Chibueze. How could they? Chibueze was a quiet woman. A grieving woman. A woman who barely left her house. How could she be connected to people disappearing? Then a third person disappeared. A boy of 8 years old, the grandson of Nwanima herself. The old woman came to the village with her face dark with grief and anger. "I know what is happening," she said to the gathered people. "I warned you. I told you that uncontrolled grief becomes poison. And now, the poison is spreading." "What do you mean?" the village chief asked. "I mean," Nwanima said, "that Chibueze's obsession has opened a door. A door between this world and the world of the dead. Every night, when she calls to her husband, she calls so loudly that others hear her. Others from the place of death. And they answer. They come to our village, and they take our people back with them." The village people looked at each other with confusion and fear. "That is not possible," someone said. "That is only a story. That does not really happen." But Nwanima was certain. She had lived 92 years. She had seen many things. And she knew the difference between the living and the dead. She knew that when someone loved the dead too much, the boundary between the two worlds could become thin. "We must go to Chibueze," Nwanima said. "We must make her stop. We must make her accept the death of her husband. We must close the door that she has opened." Some of the village people agreed. Others were still not sure. But fear was spreading like a virus. Every day, they waited to hear if another person had disappeared. Every parent held their child a little closer. Every person who went to fetch water or gather firewood was afraid they would not return. Finally, a group of village elders, led by Nwanima, came to Chibueze's house. They found her in her kitchen, cooking. She was preparing her husband's favorite soup. The pot was bubbling. The smell filled the small house. And Chibueze was smiling, a smile that was both peaceful and deeply wrong. "Chibueze," Nwanima said, "you must stop this. You must accept that your husband is dead. You must release him." Chibueze looked at the old woman with eyes that did not quite see her. "My husband is here," Chibueze said. "He comes every night. I set his place at the table, and he sits, and he eats, and we talk. He is not dead. He is only present in a different way." "That is not your husband," another elder said, with fear in her voice. "That is a shadow. That is a memory. That is something pretending to be your husband." "No," Chibueze said quietly. "That is my husband. Because I made it so. Because my love is strong enough to hold him here. Because I will not let him go." Nwanima felt cold move through her bones. "How many people have died?" she whispered. Chibueze did not answer directly. She simply continued stirring her pot. "The boundary between life and death is thin," Chibueze said, speaking as if to herself. "And when you love someone enough, when you want them badly enough, you can make them stay. But nothing is free. Everything has a price. My husband's presence here, he is here because others are willing to leave. People come to him, and they go with him, and in exchange, he stays with me." "You are killing them," Nwanima said, understanding finally. "Your obsession is killing them." "No," Chibueze said, and now she looked directly at the old woman. "My love is calling them. They are answering. And when they answer, they are going to a place where there is no pain. No loneliness. No death. Is that so terrible?" The elders looked at each other. They realized then that Chibueze was lost. She was not crazy, exactly. She was simply in a place where they could not reach her. A place between love and obsession, between memory and presence, between life and death. "We must stop her," one elder said firmly. "But how do you stop someone from cooking? How do you stop someone from speaking to the dead?" There was no law in the village against grief. There was no rule that said a widow could not set her table for two. The answer came on the night that Nwanima's daughter came to Chibueze's house. Nwanima's daughter was named Ife. She was in her 60s, and she had lost her own son to death many years before. She had grieved, as all mothers grieve. But she had also accepted. She had learned to live with the empty space where her son had been. Ife came to Chibueze's house at sunset with one purpose, to find out the truth, once and for all. She knocked on the door. Chibueze opened it, and she smiled. "Come," Chibueze said. "Come and eat with us. With Emeka and me. Come and see that he is here. Come and see that love can overcome death itself." Ife stepped inside the small house. It was warm and smelled of cooking spices. The table was set for two, one plate full of food, one plate empty. "Sit," Chibueze said, gesturing to the empty chair. "Sit where my husband sits every night. And you will see. You will understand." Ife sat down slowly. Chibueze served her a plate of food. The woman across from her began to eat, and she continued to speak, not to Ife, but to the empty chair. "My husband," Chibueze said softly, "today was a good day. The market was peaceful. The rain was gentle. And I have made your favorite soup. It is warm and perfect, exactly as you like it." Ife watched the woman speak to the empty chair. She watched her smile as if the chair was smiling back. She watched her pause, as if listening to something only she could hear. And in that moment, Ife realized something terrible. Something was in the room with them. Not a ghost, exactly. Not a spirit in the way she understood spirits. But something was there. She could feel it. It was present in the way that Chibueze's eyes kept moving from her plate to the empty chair. It was present in the way that Chibueze's conversation paused, as if someone was speaking BAC. The thing in the room was Chibueze's desperation. The thing in the room was the boundary between life and death, held open by pure, obsessive love. And the thing in the room was hungry. Ife felt it then, a pull. A sensation like something was reaching out for her and asking her to stay. To sit at this table forever. To never leave. To be another face in the darkness that surrounded Chibueze's love. She stood up suddenly. "I must go," she said. Chibueze looked at her with an expression of sadness. "Stay longer," she said. "My husband, he likes to have others here. It is less lonely for him. It reminds him of the way life was. When there were voices and company. Will you not stay?" Ife backed toward the door. "No," she said. "I must go. I must leave this place." She left the house and ran back to the village, her heart beating fast, her breath coming in gas. P.S. When she reached the village center, she fell to her knees and told the people what she had experienced. "There is something in that house," she said. "Something that is not her husband, but something that Chibueze has created by refusing to let him go. It is alive, and it is hungry, and it is taking our people." The village understood then. They understood what Nwanima had been trying to tell them. Chibueze had not opened the door to the world of the dead to bring her husband back. She had opened a door for something else. Something that fed on the disappearance of the living. Something that grew stronger every time someone answered Chibueze's call and left the world behind. The next morning, the elders came to Chibueze's house. They came with fire. They came with words of power and cleansing. They came to close the door that love had opened. When they entered the house, they found Chibueze at her table, serving food to an empty chair. But the food was not being eaten. It was being absorbed into the air itself, as if invisible hands were taking it and consuming it. "Chibueze," Nwanima said, her voice hard as stone. "You must stop. You must let your husband go. You must close this door." Chibueze looked at the old woman, and for the first time, there was fear in her eyes. "I cannot," she said. "If I stop calling to him, he will disappear completely. He will be truly gone. I cannot bear that. I cannot let him go. Then our people will continue to disappear," Nwanima said. "Is that what you want? Is your love for your husband more important than the lives of your village?" Chibueze did not answer. She simply looked at the empty chair, and her face broke into tears. "I do not know how to live without him," she whispered. Nwaninma understood then that Chibueze was not evil. She was simply a woman who had loved so much that she had forgot how to do anything else. She had loved so much that she had lost herself. The elders built a fire in Chibueze's kitchen. They took every pot and every dish and every plate. They took the table. They took the chair where her husband had sat so many times in life and where he continued to sit, or so she believed, in death. And as the fire grew, something strange happened. The air in the house changed. It became lighter. The invisible presence that had been feeding on the disappearance of the villagers began to weaken. It began to fade. Chibueze watched them burn her kitchen, and she did not resist. She simply sat on the floor and wept. "Forgive me," she said, over and over. "Forgive me. Forgive me." The people she had called were found, days later, wandering in the forest beyond the village. They had no memory of how they got there. They did not know how many days or weeks had passed. They simply appeared, confused and frightened, among the trees. When they returned to the village, they spoke of a place of calling. A voice that kept saying, "Come. Come. Come." They spoke of walking toward the voice, and then suddenly finding themselves lost in darkness, unable to turn back. Some of them recovered quickly. Others carried the memory for the rest of their lives. And some of them, the ones who had stayed the longest in that place between life and death, never quite came back to themselves. They would sit in the village and stare at nothing, as if part of them was still hearing that voice calling them. Chibueze lived for another 10 years after the burning of her kitchen. But she was not the same woman. The obsession that had kept her alive had been cut away, and what remained was an empty shell. She moved through the village like a ghost, a woman who had already crossed over but had not yet left. She no longer cooked. She no longer spoke to her dead husband. She simply sat in what remained of her house and stared at the ashes of her kitchen. Sometimes, people would bring her food. Sometimes, she would eat. Sometimes, she would forget to eat for days at a time. The village people did not shun her, exactly. But they also did not seek her company. She was a reminder of something they did not want to think about. She was proof of what could happen when love became obsession. When memory became haunting. When refusal to accept death could cost the lives of others. Nwaninma visited her sometimes. "I understand now," Chibueze said to the old woman one afternoon. "I understand that my love was selfish. I loved my husband so much that I did not care about the pain it caused others. I did not care if people disappeared. I only cared about having him with me." "Yes," Nwaninma said simply. "Will I be forgiven?" Chibueze asked. Nwaninma was quiet for a long time. "Forgiveness is not given by me," she finally said. "It is given only by those who were hurt. And some of them, the ones who lost part of themselves in that place between life and death, they may never forgive you. They may carry the mark of your obsession for the rest of their lives. That is the cost you must pay." Chibueze nodded. She understood. There was no easy answer. There was no way to undo what she had done. There was only the knowledge of her mistake, and the weight of it, and the slow walk through the rest of her life carrying that weight. When Chibueze died, 10 years later, the village buried her with respect. They did not speak badly of her. But they also did not forget what she had done. And for generations after, the story was told to young people in the village. The story of the woman who loved too much. The story of the widow who could not let go. This story teaches us something that is difficult and painful to understand. Sometimes, love itself can become a curse. We celebrate love as the highest thing. We are taught that love is pure and good and can overcome anything. But this story shows us that love without wisdom, love without acceptance, love without the ability to let go, this kind of love can destroy. Chibueze loved her husband truly. Nobody in the village doubted that. Her love was real and deep and beautiful. But her love was also selfish. It was focused on her own need to have him back, rather than on his peace or his rest or his ability to move on to whatever comes after Faye. In modern days, we see this kind of obsessive love everywhere. Parents who cannot let their children become independent. Partners who cannot accept that a relationship has ended. Children who cannot allow their parents to pass peacefully into death. We hold on to people because we are afraid of being alone. We call it love, but often it is fear. We call it loyalty, but often it is selfishness. We call it devotion, but often it is just our own refusal to accept the truth of loss. The difficult truth is this: real love sometimes means letting go. Real love sometimes means accepting that the person we love is gone, and we must learn to live in a world where they are not. Real love means caring about their peace more than we care about our own comfort. Chibueze learned this too late. By the time she understood, people had disappeared. Lives had been changed forever. Damage had been done that could not be undone. 1. The question this story asks is, what are you holding on to that you should let go? Is there someone you are keeping in your life not because it is good for them, but because you cannot bear to live without them? Are you loving them, or are you loving the idea of them? Are you honoring their memory, or are you using their memory to avoid your own grief? These are hard questions. But they are important ones. I want you to think about something when this story ends. Think about the people in your life who have passed away. Think about whether you are honoring their memory or obsessing over it. Think about the difference between keeping them alive in your heart and trying to keep them alive in your kitchen table. Think about the people around you who are grieving. Are you allowing them to move forward, or are you keeping them stuck in their pain by constantly bringing up the dead person's name? Are you helping them heal, or are you preventing them from healing? And if you are grieving yourself, if you are holding on to someone who is no longer here, I want you to know this: it is okay to miss them. It is okay to feel pain. It is okay to remember them with love. But it is also okay to let them go. And sometimes, letting them go is the greatest act of love you can give them. If this story moved you, if it made you think about your own life and your own relationships, please tell me in the comments. Share your own story of loss. Share what you are holding onto that maybe you need to let go. Because we heal through speaking. We grow by being honest about our pain. And if you want to hear more stories like this, stories from African villages that teach us about life, death, love, and what it means to be human, please subscribe to this channel. Ring the bell. Let these stories remind you that wisdom is found not in happiness, but in understanding the true cost of our choices. Thank you for listening. Thank you for staying until the end. And remember, love is beautiful. But love without wisdom becomes a curse. Choose to love wisely. Choose to let go when the time comes. Choose to honor those who have passed by living fully in the world they have left behind. Rest well tonight. And tomorrow, embrace the people who are still alive. Because they are the ones who can truly be with you.